Okay, I'd like to take a few moments as a brief follow-up from this past Sunday's message, which centered on the verse in Romans chapter 5, verse 17, which says, "For if by the trespass of one man," which is referring to Adam, "death reigned through that one man, how much more will those who receive God's abundant provision of grace and the gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ?" So, our time this past Sunday focused upon this particular phrase, to reign in life, present tense, talking about believers who, through faith in Christ, have been given the authority, the ability to reign. What does that word reign mean? What does that word rule? To rule over Satan, to reign over sin, to exercise authority over the factors and forces of the world so that we live with righteousness, we live with holiness, we live like Christ, and we walk in the nobility and the royalty that has been bestowed upon us because of our positioning in Him. So if you want to go back and look at that message, I encourage you to do that. One thing we had pushed stop on the recording, and we had spent a few minutes of just discussion in concluding the message and concluding service. And one good point was brought up that I wanted to share here, and that was in the very beginning when God created Adam and Eve, and He empowered them with all authority to rule and to reign over creation. Satan, despising the position that he had been placed in, rebelled against the Lord, and he effectively deceived Adam to steal from Adam the authority that God had rightfully given. And because Adam chose to walk in rebellion and give in to the temptation of the enemy, give in to that deception, that lie, Adam forfeited his authority, his God-given authority, and that was granted to Satan. So do you remember in the three temptations of Jesus where Satan says, if you would just bow down and worship me, I have the power, I have been given authority over all rulers, over all kingdoms in the world. I'll give that to you if you just bow down and worship me. Now, one day, Satan is going to find a man who's going to be willing to do that. That's going to be the Antichrist, who is going to be definitely, I think, endowed with many earthly characteristics, whether it's his speech, his persona. But Satan, I think, is going to supernaturally empower this individual, and they are going to rule. They're going to bow down to Satan, to worship Satan, and Satan is going to be the force behind the Antichrist rule and reign. But he will install this human being as a ruler over the entire world. He thought he could trick Jesus to doing this. Jesus didn't take the bait. Rather, Jesus, in his obedience to his Father, was able to make a provision for the restoration of Adam's race to regain the authority that was lost. So all who put their faith in Christ, death, sin, and Satan no longer reign over them. But now, Romans chapter 5, verse 17 is one of many passages that declare that those who have put their faith in Christ now have been restored to the nobility, royalty, and authority of rulership, of reigning with Him through Christ in the heavenly realms. Ephesians 2:6 says, we have been seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. Ephesians 1, Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father. Ephesians 2, we believers are seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. If Jesus is the head of the church, believers are His body. Ephesians 1 says all things have been placed under the feet of Jesus, which means they are under the church. For the benefit of the church, Christ reigns and has shared that authority with the church. So what Satan manipulatively, deceptively stole from Adam, Christ has come to restore. And the question is, are we reigning in life as Paul communicated that we should, as Christ expects, following his example and his model? Um, the other thing that kind of stood out to me that we mentioned, I don't know if this was caught on video or not, but the first Adam came, he fell to the temptation of the enemy. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Jesus is called the second Adam. And I believe, I don't know if you've ever thought of this before, but is it possible that when Jesus came, Jesus was a picture of what God had originally intended for the first Adam, for Adam? So Jesus is called the second Adam, but could Jesus be a picture, an earthly picture, because Jesus took on human form? Could Jesus be an earthly picture of what God had originally intended for Adam? Now think about Jesus' characteristics and example for a moment. He had a relationship of oneness with the Father. Was that God's purpose for Adam, to have a oneness and unity of relationship? I would say yes. What about obedience? Was it God the Father's objective to have Adam walk in obedience and partnership in managing and ruling over the world, the universe? I would say yes. So if you think about relationship, righteousness, authority, was Jesus a blessing to all who encountered him? Yes. Was Adam designed to be a blessing to the rest of creation and to mankind? I would say yes. So Jesus' earthly life, in some sense, was a picture of what God had originally designed for Adam's life: to rule over sin, to rule over Satan, to rule over evil, to live in the world but not be of the world, and to exercise this kingly authority that we see beginning in Jesus, kind of in a spiritual sense, but and over all of creation. I mean, Jesus did a bunch of miracles, but we're going to see it in the fullest sense when he returns to the earth in the second coming. Last thought, a little bit of an aside. We know that the snake in Genesis spoke to Adam. Is it possible that before the fall, before sin, all animals could talk? Now, I know there's children's stories about this, and it's exciting to imagine these types of things. But is it possible that with sin, the distortion of Adam's calling and Adam's authority, but maybe there were other negative effects on creation as well? We know there's thorns and thistles. We know that carnivores entered, at that moment. I mean, with the change, with the transformation of sin, before sin, nothing died. So there was no carnivores in the sense that we have today. Everything, I think, ate vegetation. In fact, there's no mention to Adam of meat for food. He said, vegetation, I give you the trees, I give you the seeds to eat. This is going to sustain you. So is it possible before Adam sinned that animals were talking animals? And that when we see a restoration, when we see a renewal of God's original intention, not only will mankind who put their faith in Christ step up to the full sense of nobility and royalty and reigning and ruling as he originally designed Adam, but even the animal world will be restored and renewed to its original creation, and we will get to see enhanced characteristics of the human race, but also the animal kingdom and all of creation as well. Something interesting to think about. I hope you'll look back on this past Sunday's message on Romans chapter 5, verse 17, reigning in life, if you've missed that this past weekend. All right, God bless.